Hello, and welcome to Unit of the Week number 416. This is a pretty important number, because that means we've been doing Unit of the Week for 8 years now, which is a, well, decent amount of time, I guess, to be continuing this series. And to celebrate its 8-year anniversary, I think now is the perfect time to introduce Warno into our lineup of Unit of the Week, as it's been patched quite a lot since its early access release and is now actually quite a fun game. And by adding Warno to the lineup, I'm going to be changing one of the rules I've had of Unit of the Week since its inception, and that is not covering the same unit twice. It's really mainly applied back when I started with Airline Battle and then went to Red Dragon. For example, if I covered the BMP3 in Airline Battle, I wasn't going to cover it in Red Dragon. But considering the differences between Wargame and Warno and Steel Division are quite different, I think we can spend some time talking about units we may have heard about 7 years ago, which most of you probably have forgotten about. So, to start off, the first Warno Unit of the Week, we're going to be talking about a unit we did actually talk about back in Unit of the Week number 152. Today, we're talking about the Challenger Mark II, and it's had a little bit of a glow-up since we last talked about it. The Challenger 1 was a British main battle tank, which entered into service in 1983, with around about 420 being built by the end of its production run in 1989. It was meant to replace the Chieftain tank by mainly improving its armor and mobility, which the Chieftain lacked, especially in a 1980s battlefield with newer Soviet tanks being developed. The Challenger 1 had a 1200 horsepower engine, which was more beefier than the Chieftain, but not as good compared to Leopard 4 or the M1 Abrams. It also featured a much better armor protection scheme, featuring chop arm armor, which is basically having ceramic armor mixed in with the metal standard armor, and these ceramic tiles help deal with heat warheads. It's still equipped with the 120mm rifled gun, which boasted some pretty damn good accuracy. During the Gulf War, where the Challenger really saw its main combat service, a Challenger managed to blow up an Iraqi tank at over 4 kilometers away, which is pretty impressive. What's also impressive is that the Challenger tanks during the Iraq War managed to blow up 300 Iraqi tanks to no Challengers being lost. However, by the year 2000, the Challenger 1 would end up being phased out of service and replaced with the Challenger 2. In-game, the Challenger Mark II is a 300-point main battle tank available to the 1st British Armour Division and the 2nd British Infantry Division. It has 3 weapons. So, first up, you have the L11A5 120mm cannon with 64 rounds of ammunition. Must be a fan of Nintendo. With a penetration of 19, 1.4 HE, maximum range of 2.2 kilometers, 65% accuracy, 55% on the move, 8 rate of fire, and an aiming time of 3 seconds. It's a pretty decent main battle tank cannon. It will go through the majority of Soviet tanks quite easily. It will have a little bit of a harder time against TATUs and the like. And then you have 2 7.62mm machine guns. If we look up to its miscellaneous stats, we have 20 frontal armor, 8 at side, 5 at rear, and 3 on top. If we pop down to the rest of its miscellaneous stats, it has 10 HP, surprisingly it's not amphibious, has an autonomy of 6 kilometers, mediocre optics, a speed of 54 kilometers off-road, 79 on the road, bad stealth, and you cannot advance deploy it. In battle, the Challenger Mark II is a pretty, honestly, mediocre super heavy tank of the super heavies. It's good at dealing with the majority of other armored threats, but when up against such heavy armor like the TATU, frankly, you're just outclassed. The TATU is just built different. It is a very scary tank. And when compared to your other friendly NATO super heavy tanks like the HA Abrams or the Leopard 4, once again you're also pretty much outclassed in the main statistics which matter, which is armor, which is mostly the same, but more importantly, the gun, as the Challenger Mark II has a pretty okay penetration of 19. However, it does not make the Challenger Mark II a terrible tank. Because you gotta realize, if you're fighting against the Soviets, for example, or if there's TATUs, there's only one Soviet division with TATUs. Most of the time, you're going to be blapping T-64s, T-72 export models, and T-80Bs, which the Challenger Mark II can quite easily deal with. In both divisions, this is definitely a must-take unit. In the 1st British Armour Division, for example, you get 6 cards of these tanks, which is more than you'll really ever need, with a pretty generous baseline availability of 3 with no veterancy, 2 with 1 veterancy, and 1 with 2 veterancy. In the 2nd Infantry Division, this is really a must-take, as these are your only proper tanks available to you, apart from some M48 patterns. There's also the Challenger Commander tank, which I would frankly say is not really worth it. Yes, it's hard to CV snipe, but you only ever get 1 of them per card, where in both divisions you can get tank CVs where you at least get 2 per card. Yeah, a lot or less armoured, but a CV shouldn't be getting itself into fights to begin with. Overall, the Challenger Mark II may not be the best of the current super heavy tank lineup in Warno, but it's still a good tank regardless. It can get the job done, and just as long as you're not running up against TATUs, you should be quite fine. And even then, against TATUs, if you get in close enough, you can make it a fair fight, run Ray or another, or just use a Harrier cluster bomber. Anyway, that's all I have time for. This has been another Rang Rouge Unit of the Week. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as usual, please just take it easy.